Knowing how to debug your code while working with Python is extremely important. It will save you a lot of time and a lot of headache. And one of the most important tools we use when we're debugging Python is PDB. PDB is a built-in library that comes with Python. Whenever you install Python, you have PDB, and you need to know how to use PDB so you know how to debug your code. Debugging means basically you put a pause in the code while the code is running. It will pause wherever you need it to be. Then you can actually interact with it. You can print variables, you can call functions, you can literally interact with the code real life. So if you have some code that's running and you don't know what the data looks like, it gets the data from somewhere, it makes an API call or something like that, and you don't know what that looks like, you put a breakpoint right there, right after you get the data, and you can print the data on the console and you can see what it is. So you can figure out, okay, the data looks like this, I need to do this, right? This is how I'm going to access it. This is what I need to do. So that is a tool that's extremely useful. I use it every day, and it is quite amazing if you manage to code in Python without actually knowing how to use a PDB. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to use it and using real examples. So I'm going to demo it. I also have a blog post about this, particularly this, so you don't have to memorize all the commands we're going to do here. Everything is right here. I'll link it in the video and just check it out and use it as a reference. Okay, so there are some commands we're going to look at. We're not going to look at pretty much almost everything in here in this video. Okay, just to make it easy for you, I have it here listed. There are more commands. There's a lot more commands, and I actually have a link to the official documentation, so you can go check out if you're interested in knowing more commands. But these ones are the ones we're going to use most often. I've been programming in Python for 10 years, and I don't think I've ever used any other command other than those ones listed here. And I'm going to show you how to use those here, okay? If you're new to the channel, my name is Armas Kunfu. I'm a senior software engineer in test. What I do is teach people QA automation, software testing, and automation, mostly based on Python right now. I have a bootcamp I run, you can check it out, and I have a bunch of courses that teach people QA automation, as well as a bunch of videos. Pretty much all I target is QA automation. So subscribe to the channel so you learn more about me and about my content. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. That would really help the algorithm, right? That would help other people find my stuff. All right, so let's jump right into it. I have a script I prepared. Those are the same scripts I used as an example here, okay? So I have two files. There's a main file that has a main function. It calls this function called gather data, and it calls another function called process data. And those are in a different file in this helpers file. Just two functions. Gather data just returns a dictionary. Process data just takes whatever data it got, it needs to be a dictionary, and adds a new field to it that says process true and return it, okay? So let's just run the script first. So normally you would just come and you say Python or Python 3. Let me do Python 3 because I'm not in a virtual environment. And I'm just going to say main. All right, I just run it. It called this function. Then it got some information and passed it into this function. Then this function returned something, and it printed both. It printed the original and it printed the second one. So now let's say I want to know what did this data look like? What did this function return, right? So yeah, most of you are going to think, oh, you can just print it. Yes, I can just do data, right? And just run the script, and this will show me it prints the actual dictionary, and that's one way to debug it, but that's not really a very friendly way. You cannot interact with it. You cannot play with the actual variable. And if you have a long script, let's say the script needs to run for a whole minute until it gets to this point, then now you're going to have to wait a whole minute until you actually see the stuff being printed. Or sometimes it's logging a lot of stuff, so it's kind of hard to find what you printed, right? So it's not really the professional way of doing it. You just printed a variable to see what the content is. If the variable has a data that's much bigger than this, it's hard to see with the print. So the best way to do it, the professional way to do it, is to use a breakpoint, to use PDB, okay? So you would import PDB. You can say import PDB. I'm going to do an inline import. Of course, you can import the PDB up here, but you can do it on inline in Python too. So I'm just going to do inline pdb.setTrace. That is the key. pdb.setTrace. This is what you need to put in, okay? Import PDB, pdb.setTrace. I like to import it in line because I can just delete. Well, I eventually have to delete it, so I can delete it in one go. Now, if I run the script, it's going to actually pause. Okay, so you're going, when the script pauses, you're going to see this PDB. If you see this PDB, that means the script has paused. So if we look at this documentation, now we can actually do any of this commands. You can actually give PDB a command. Okay, so let's say the first, we can go by this order if we want. Let's do P. So P is print, right? So we put a breakpoint here, so this variable is defined already. So I can do P and data. P is for print. Okay, so we just print it. I can also do print data. I can also just type data. Right, that one is pretty much, it works most of the time. So P is a command for print. Okay, the other one is pretty print, PP. Okay, pretty print, that's the one I use most out of all the commands. Technically, this is my favorite one because it will format it. A lot of times I'm working with big data. In this case, this is a small dictionary, but if you have a big dictionary and it prints it like this, it's hard to see. I'll show you an example of that. So you're going to do PP data, pretty print data, and it is going to be formatted nicely, right? A dictionary is easier to see this. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer to see it like this, or do you prefer to see it like that? Especially when it is quite big. Okay, so that is one. I'm actually going to show you how the big data looks different. I didn't plan on it when I'm creating the script. So let me just switch over to another project. Okay, so I just created this script actually. So if you look at the script, it just makes an API call. It's making an API call to a local e-commerce site that I have running locally. This is the site I use to teach automation, to practice automation. So it's just making an API call and it gets a response, and it's just printing the response, the JSON response. So if I run that script, okay, and it's going to print something that looks like this, very difficult to read, right? So I'm going to put a breakpoint right after whatever I wanted to pause. I wanted to pause here. So I'm going to say import PDB set trace. Okay. By the way, I'm going to show you another option to do this shortly. And I'm going to run the script again. Run the script. It paused, right? So I can do the same thing. I can do P. You can see that P response.json. It's not very easy to read, is it? But now if you do PP response.json, it prints it like this. Much more easier to read. So when the data is big like this, when you get a much bigger data set, when you do a pretty print, helps a lot. It's much easier to read this than it was before I did the PP. Okay, so that's the use of the PP. So print P or PP, pretty print. That's the one that I use most often, and that's what I use it for. So for the set trace, now if you're using Python 3.7 and above, you don't have to do this anymore. You can just put a breakpoint without having to import anything. Okay, so I can comment this out, so I can just leave it on the screen. You can just type in breakpoint as a function call, and that will actually do what this is doing. Okay, I'm going to show you. I'm going to call it again. Bam! It hit the breakpoint. It does the same thing. Okay, that is one of the commands we're going to look at. So the next one is C. Like, let's say you wanna just continue. Once you're done, I put a breakpoint here. I printed PP data. I see what the data is. Okay, I'm good. I just want to continue. Go to the next one. Just continue my script. You put C for continue. It's lowercase. All these commands are lowercase. So C and hit enter, and we'll just continue. If there is another breakpoint, and it will stop there. If not, it will just continue until the script is done. So I can put, to show you that, I can put another breakpoint saying here breakpoint. Okay, and I'm going to run the script. Let me clear real quick to make it easier to see. Run the script. So it stopped here. It tells you where it stopped. It stopped in the main.py line 7, right? Line 6 is where the breakpoint is. The next thing that's going to run is line 7. That's where it stopped. And I hit continue. I hit C. Is going to stop on the next breakpoint. Now it's showing us it's in the same file, main.py, but it is line 10. Line 10 is the next thing that's going to execute. If I do C, it is done. Okay, so we saw how to do P or PP. Then we saw C. Okay, another one you want to look at is L for list. So if I clear this, if I run it, you can just hit L and enter, and I'll show you where you are right now, where the breakpoint is. Basically, it shows you the code around your breakpoint. Right now the breakpoint is here. When you do L, it will just expand it, and you can see where it is. Okay, it is useful. This is really small, but it is useful sometimes. I'll show you another example. So this code here is basically a test. It's an automated test for the front end using Selenium, and in this test we have this is a test to verify. It opens the browser and it adds a coupon and make sure that coupon actually works. So this is in work in progress. I was actually working on this in class yesterday in my bootcamp. So we didn't finish it. So we have this function. This test imports this function. In this function, we have a function called a Selenium call that says wait and get text, and we actually want to see what does it get. Right? It's going to go to the front end from the browser and get the text that's displayed, the total amount. And I want to see what it looks like to make sure it did the right thing. So what do? I just come here, I put a breakpoint, I hit run. Okay, the browser opens. This is the Selenium thing. If you're not familiar with Selenium, if you're not into QA, don't worry about it. All you need to know is Python is running, Python Selenium, it opened the browser. Okay, now I hit the breakpoint, so I can do L to see where I am. I can see where I am. Now I can print this variable, total text. I can do pp, print that, and now show me 64, 66, 44. And I can come here, look at the total, it's actually getting this. Now I know it did the right thing. So I'm using the debugger while I'm coding every step to see if it's doing the right thing. Another beauty of the debugger for testers, for people working with Selenium, you can actually interact with the browser. The browser is open right now, right? I can actually make a function call to see if my function works. I write a new function and I want to see if it works. I can literally, I don't have to run the whole test from scratch. I don't have to wait for the browser to open, go through the flow to get to where I need to be. I can just interact. I can quickly show you. If you can see this, there's nothing here, right? I can probably call a function, let's see, within the, because you can call a function within the same file where the breakpoint is. So let's say input coupon. I can call this function. I can do self.input coupon. Let me just input ABCD, hit enter, right? You can see it actually typed into the browser. So you can verify locators, you can verify if you're doing the right things. So that's an example of putting a breakpoint. And if you do L, it shows you what's around it. In this case, we already executed a function and it's at the end because it just says EOF, end of file. It's not really doing much. I do C to continue, and we'll just continue. The breakpoint was in this function, get car total, right? Now I have another breakpoint here, so just hit that breakpoint. If I do L to list, it actually shows me where I am. I'm on line 44, okay? So that is one use case. So other than L, the next useful one is N for next. You want to execute the next line. You want to execute the next. That's N. Okay, so I'm going to hit C here. C again. I'm going to show you how to use the N. So if I run the script again, I'm back to the main script, right? So we executed this and we hit the breakpoint here, right? So if I hit C, it's just going to continue. In fact, it's going to continue, in this case, it's going to continue until this breakpoint. In fact, let me just delete this breakpoint. Okay, I'm going to hit C twice. Okay, run the script. Now if I hit C, it's just going to finish, right? Because there's no other breakpoint. Okay, but instead of C, if I put N for next, it's just going to execute the next line. Right now, it's here, right? It's going to execute this. If I try to print this variable, by the way, guys, if I try to print, if I do pp processed data, I'm going to get a name error because it's not defined. The breakpoint is here on line 6. This variable is defined on line 7. So if you're trying to access or reference that variable, it's going to say unknown, right? It's not going to know it. So I'm going to hit N for next. Now it executed this line and it paused on the next line. It automatically. It will execute the next line and pause it. It's not going to go inside of this function. We're going to look at another option for that. It's just going to execute this and go to the next one. So if you see this arrow tells you where to stop. It is stopped on line 8. The next thing it's going to do is line 8. If you do L, again, it shows you the little arrow what the next line is. So I did N. Again, if I do N now, N again, you can just skip N. Now do the next one. Now it executed this. That's why I printed this original data, right? And it paused again. So when you hit N, it's going to go one step, stop. The next step, stop. the next step, stop. And you have to keep hitting N if you want to execute it line by line by line. When you're done, you hit C, it will go and do everything. So if I do N again, it's going to do process data. That's the last line. If I do N, it does something weird, but it actually finishes actually at the end. Okay, so N. So P for pretty print, and N is one of the two most commonly used, at least for me personally. That's what I use the most. Okay, that's N for next. Again, all of that is in the what happened to this, right? That is N here, next. Okay, let's look at step. Step is like N, but it actually will go into the function. Okay, so let me clear this, run it again, right? So when you do S, right now if we do N, it will just execute the next line. Like it would literally execute the whole function and go to the next line. But if I do S, it will step into it. The S stands for step. It will actually step into the next function. So if I do S, so if I do L, for example, to show you where I am, I'm in here. If I do S, hit enter, which is step. Now where am I? Now I'm actually in helpers.py line 9. So I'm actually in this file, in this function, line 9, in here. Okay, it's going into this folder. It actually stepped into it. Even though it's in a different file, it went inside of it. If I do L, it shows me where I am. I can do S again, step through it. Okay, it's showing me the next line that's been executed is this guy. If I do, oops, did I mess that up? If I do S, so you can keep stepping through it. So a lot of times stepping through it, it goes into the function. So if you're dealing with like built-in libraries and things like that, that function might have a lot of code, so it's going to step is too detailed. That's why I don't use step a lot, because it's very much detailed. If there's a function, usually I just want to call the function and go to the next line. I don't want to go inside of the function. But if you have a use case when you need to go inside a function and do debugging inside of that function, you do S. But a lot of times when you do S, it is quite it goes too many lines, because built-in libraries and stuff, there's a lot of logic. So you would have to step through each one of those logics. There is a use case for that, but I don't use it often. I use N when I need to do that. Most of the time, I actually go in there. I just put a breakpoint here. If I want to step through this function, I'll just come here and I'll put a breakpoint in here instead. Instead of starting from S, put a breakpoint in the main and stepping through it, I actually put a breakpoint. But that's just the way I like to work. As long as you understand it, you're eventually going to figure out what your preference is. Okay. So we looked at the most important ones that I feel are the most important ones. We looked at how to use a breakpoint function. We looked at how to do print, how to do pretty print, how to do continue, list, which is L, next, which is N, S, to step through it. Args, I actually recently learned about it. It will just show you the parameters that the function takes, the arguments of the function. In this case, it doesn't take any arguments, so can't really show you. But we can put a breakpoint inside of process data. Okay, process data. Let's put a breakpoint here, and I'm going to run the script. Clear. I'm actually going to run main, right? And we paused inside of the process data because that takes an argument. So if I do A and hit enter, it actually tells me what the arguments are. If this thing takes another argument, let's say I can give it foo, and in the main I should pass in foo is ABC. Okay, I'm passing it into process data now, so just so I can show you the two arguments. So if I hit the script, now I'm in that. If I do L, you can see where I am. If I do A to show the arguments, and it will show me what are the arguments that function is taking. That's also really useful. I just discovered this recently, but I'm definitely going to use it quite often, because a lot of times I do this type of thing. I get into a function and I want to see what's inside that function. The way I was using it is I actually call locals. You can just call this function locals, and it will give you all the parameters there. Okay, that's what I was using, but sometimes it gives you a bunch of other gibberish too. So I really like this A with PDB. And then another one in the list that we didn't talk about, there's a Q. Okay, so we do Q, you just quit. It's not even going to go to the end. If you just you have a long script, you put a breakpoint. If you do C, it's going to go all the way, right? But if you do Q, it's just going to quit it. It's like we're doing Control C. Okay, So that's really what I want to show you. Is really useful when you look at this automation test, for example. There is so much code and you have to go through so much process. It will take like a whole minute to get to the line you want to execute. And you don't want to keep, I know a minute might sound like it's not much, but if you're just developing and you just got to sit there and wait an entire minute without doing anything, it's not a good experience. But you can put a breakpoint, the code will get there, it will pause there, then you can directly interact with the code and debug. Okay, that's really what we use debugger for. Go through this documentation, go through this tutorial step by step, practice it. This is coding. You're not just by watching video, you're not going to learn. It's just like a sport. You got to practice, practice, and practice. So try those out. All you got to do is write some simple scripts like the examples I have. I will give you these examples. I'll put the link to GitHub in the description. So I'm going to put a link to the code and a description, the link to the blog post, right? The tutorial. And you should practice. Just check it out. All in any of your code. Just put breakpoint in there and just use it. Just remember, if you're using anything older than 3.7, you have to use set trace. Okay, and this works with any framework. And robot framework it works, but you have to do something a little bit different. And it's a very useful debugging tool. And hopefully you will start to use it on your day-to-day coding practices. All right. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Please give the video a thumbs up to help the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you like tutorials like this. If you were new to Python, you want to learn and follow me along, please do so. And thank you for watching.